We have the will to turn this country round.
Veteran right-wing politician Ann Widdecombe addressing the Reform UK conference last year. Late this afternoon, police confirmed that the 78-year-old's sudden and unexpected death may have been murder, and they'd taken a man into custody.
We can confirm that a 26-year-old man was arrested at an address in Newton Abbot this afternoon on suspicion of the murder of Ann Widdecombe. The suspect, who is a white British national, remains in police custody whilst the inquiries continue.
There is a village on the southern edge of Dartmoor National Park in the county of Devon where the moorland begins to flatten and the roads narrow to single tracks between ancient stone walls. Hayter Vale is a place of extraordinary quiet, a hamlet of scattered cottages and open sky where the granite outcrops of the moor rise above the tree line, and the only sounds on most days are wind and bird song. It is the kind of place people choose when they want to live deliberately, far from the noise of politics and the reach of the modern world. Ann Widdecombe had chosen it. She had spent 23 years in the House of Commons. She had stood in ministerial corridors and shouted across dispatch boxes, had been celebrated by Conservative Party conferences and denounced by opponents in equal measure. She had appeared on primetime television, written novels, marched for Brexit, and in her late 70s was still making media appearances, still arguing her corner, still very much present in British public life. She was, by any measure, one of the most recognizable women in the country. On the morning of Wednesday, the 8th of July, 2026, Ann Widdecombe, aged 78, was at home in Hayter Vale. She had appeared remotely on Talk TV shortly after 8 o'clock that morning. She was scheduled to join a Channel 5 program via Zoom at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A researcher on that production spoke with her at 12:19. She did not answer when the Zoom call connected at 1 o'clock. She did not respond to the follow-up messages that came after that. Her agent was eventually alerted. The next morning, on the 9th of July, Ann Widdecombe was found dead at her home. Police formally announced the news to the country on the 10th of July. Within hours, Devon and Cornwall police had launched a murder investigation. What followed would shake British politics, reopen national wounds that had never fully healed, and force an entire country to ask once again whether those who enter public life can ever truly be safe. This is what we know. This is what remains unanswered, and this is why it matters. Ann Noreen Widdecombe was born on the 4th of October, 1947 in Bath, Somerset. Her father, James Murray Widdecombe, was a senior Ministry of Defense official, and her childhood followed his naval postings around the country and, at times, abroad, including a period at the Royal Naval School in Singapore. She went on to study Latin at the University of Birmingham before continuing her education at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford, where she studied philosophy, politics, and economics. At Oxford, she became secretary and treasurer of the Oxford Union and served on the University Conservative Association. She had, by various accounts, a 3-year romance while studying there, which she later confirmed herself, explaining that she had ended the relationship in order to prioritize her career. After Oxford, she worked in marketing at Unilever from 1973 to 1975 and was senior administrator at London University from 1975 to 1987. During that period, she also served as a local councillor in Surrey from 1976 to 1978. She stood for Parliament twice, in 1979 and in 1983, and was unsuccessful on both occasions. Her persistence was eventually rewarded. In 1987, Ann Widdecombe was elected Conservative MP for Maidstone, a seat she would hold, later renamed Maidstone and the Weald, until she stood down in 2010. 23 years as a Member of Parliament, an entire career by most standards, but only the beginning of her public life, as it turned out. During John Major's government, she rose through the ministerial ranks, serving in the Ministry for Employment and then at the Home Office, where her responsibilities included prisons and immigration. As Minister of State for Prisons from 1995 to 1997, she became a nationally controversial figure. In 1996, she defended the government's policy of shackling pregnant prisoners with handcuffs and chains when they were in hospital receiving prenatal care, telling the Commons that the restrictions were necessary to prevent prisoners from escaping. It was a moment that defined for many both her conviction and her capacity for controversy, qualities that would follow her throughout her public life. She became still more prominent in opposition. Following Labour's landslide victory in 1997, she became an influential member of the Conservative Shadow Cabinet, serving as Shadow Health Secretary before later becoming Shadow Home Secretary. In that role, she delivered what many observers describe as one of the most memorable political phrases in modern British history, declaring that her colleague Michael Howard had something of the night about him. It was a line that demonstrated both her wit and her willingness to be brutally candid, even about those on her own side. Throughout all of it, her faith anchored everything. She had been raised within the Church of England. In 1993, she converted to Roman Catholicism, a decision she later described as the best she had ever made. As a Catholic, she became an outspoken defender of the faith, speaking consistently on the sanctity of life, on marriage between a man and a woman, and on her opposition to abortion. She was frequently on television, unafraid to explain her beliefs in public. She never married. She was asked about it often over the years, and she addressed it directly. As she explained in various interviews, the right person had simply never come along, and she had no regrets about the life she had built. She had a noted fondness for cats and other animals, including foxes and goats, and part of her personal website was devoted to the animals she shared her life with. When she left Parliament in 2010, most politicians of her seniority would have retreated to the Lords, to the lecture circuit, to memoirs. Ann Widdecombe did none of those things quietly. In 2010, she became a contestant on BBC One's Strictly Come Dancing, paired with professional dancer Anton Dubake. Despite facing withering criticism from judges and what some described as minimal natural talent, her infectious joy stole the show, and she made it to the quarterfinals. Dubake would later call her death the saddest of news and describe himself as devastated. She also appeared in Celebrity Big Brother in 2018 and played pantomime characters, including the Evil Queen in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. She was a woman entirely unafraid of being laughed at, and that fearlessness made her, if anything, more beloved by the public who followed her. But politics never quite let go of her. She became a prominent voice in the Vote Leave campaign during the 2016 Brexit referendum, and in 2019, she was elected as a Brexit Party MEP for South West England, serving in the European Parliament until the UK formally left the European Union in January 2020. In 2023, she joined Reform UK, the successor to the Brexit Party, and took on the role of the party's spokesperson on immigration and justice. On the day she died, she had been conducting a round of media interviews. She was 78 years old, and she was still very much in the arena. Ann Widdecombe never married and lived alone at her home in Hayter Vale in southwest England on the edge of Dartmoor National Park. The village is small and remote, chosen, it seems, precisely because it was unlike Westminster. In the weeks and days before the 8th of July 2026, there is no confirmed reporting of any unusual activity, any known threats directed at her, or any publicly stated concerns about her personal safety. She appeared, by all accounts available, to be engaged in her usual media and political activity. On the morning of the 8th of July, she appeared remotely on Talk TV shortly after 8 o'clock. She was scheduled to appear via Zoom on Channel 5 that afternoon, and she was last in contact with a researcher for that program at 12:19. She did not join the Zoom call at 1 o'clock. She did not respond to the attempts to reach her that followed. According to Devon and Cornwall police, investigators now believe she was attacked at her home at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday, the 8th of July. The precise sequence of events between her final contact with the Channel 5 researcher at 12:19 and the moment of the attack, a matter of roughly 10 minutes, has not been publicly confirmed by investigators. At approximately 11:40 in the morning on the 9th of July, roughly 23 hours after investigators believe the attack took place, Ann Widdecombe was found dead at her home. The police have not publicly confirmed who found her or the precise details of how her body was discovered. The causes of that approximately 23-hour gap between the attack and the discovery remain a key part of the ongoing investigation. Investigators have not released information about what happened during that period. What is confirmed is this. On the 10th of July, 2026, the world learned that Ann Widdecombe was gone. Devon and Cornwall police confirmed that Ann Widdecombe had sustained serious injuries when she was found at her home in Hayter. A murder investigation was formally launched. Police did not disclose a cause of death beyond those words, serious injuries. Investigators have not released further details about the nature of those injuries. That information remains part of the active investigation. A significant police presence remained outside Widdecombe's residence throughout the days that followed, as forensic specialists examined the property and detectives gathered additional evidence. At a press conference on the 10th of July, Assistant Chief Constable Matt Longman said police had no reason to believe the killing was politically motivated or terror-related. That statement was notable in a country where the safety of politicians had become an acutely sensitive subject, and it was heard across Britain with relief, though also with the weight of profound uncertainty, because so little else was yet understood. What followed over the next 72 hours was one of the most closely watched police investigations in recent British memory. On the afternoon of Friday, the 10th of July, Devon and Cornwall police made their first arrest. A 26-year-old man, described by police as a British national, was arrested on suspicion of murder in Newton Abbot, approximately 9 miles from Widdecombe's home. He was held. The country waited. Early on Saturday morning, Assistant Chief Constable Longman confirmed that the 26-year-old man had been released from custody and was no longer part of the investigation. Our priority remains identifying those responsible and ensuring that all available evidence is thoroughly examined, he said. The first suspect was eliminated. Detectives were left once again with an open investigation, but the pace did not slow. Police stated that detectives were working at a significant pace to find the killer, and that they did not believe there was a risk to the public. Then late on Saturday night, the 11th of July, police announced a second arrest. Devon and Cornwall police said that a 28-year-old man had been arrested in South Yorkshire, approximately 320 kilometers from Hayter. The distance is significant. South Yorkshire is in the north of England, hundreds of miles from the remote Devon village where Ann Widdecombe had lived. Police confirmed that they had been supported by counter-terrorism policing, Northeast and South Yorkshire police, who carried out the arrest on behalf of Devon and Cornwall police. Investigators stated that at that time, there was still no information to suggest the killing was a terrorism-related incident, and that Devon and Cornwall police retain primacy of the investigation. Police also confirmed they had found no evidence the killing was politically motivated. They said the suspect was believed to be a white male. They said there was no wider risk to the public. As of the latest confirmed reporting available, the 28-year-old man arrested in South Yorkshire remains in custody. Police have not publicly named him. They have not confirmed whether he was known to Ann Widdecombe. They have not outlined any specific evidence connecting him to the scene. Investigators have not released a motive. The circumstances that led police to pursue a suspect approximately 320 kilometers from Hayter Vale have not been publicly explained. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage stated that his party had searched its own data and emails and could not identify any individual who appeared to have been targeting her. Speaking after leaving a wreath of flowers outside Widdecombe's home, he said, "We can't identify from our data any individual." Police have not confirmed or denied whether political targeting played any role in the killing. The investigation continues. When the news broke on the morning of the 10th of July, Britain stopped. Tributes came from across the political spectrum. Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the news as really shocking and said his thoughts were with Ann Widdecombe's family and friends. When asked if there was evidence the death was politically motivated, Starmer said he would not speculate. He said that Britons should rise above any political differences and that he had spoken to top officials to urge everybody to come together. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said she could not understand how someone could do something so horrific to an elderly person and added that the Conservative Party is reeling. Nigel Farage described Widdecombe as an extraordinary woman who stood up and fought for what she believed in. He said he was deeply upset over her death and noted that things have become even more dangerous for people in public life. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson called her a heroic Brexiteer and a great speaker who could move Tory audiences to such ecstasy that she was a very hard act to follow. Jeremy Vine, whose television program she had frequently appeared on, said her death was impossible to take in and that her life had been stolen. Her Strictly Come Dancing partner, Anton Dubeke, called it the saddest of news and said he was devastated. Cloud9 Management, which represented her after she left politics, said in a statement that she loved the cut and thrust of political debate and 16 years after leaving Parliament was still actively campaigning for Reform UK and offering forthright views on the hot topics of the day. Britain's Interior Minister, Shabana Mahmood, said the circumstances of Widdecombe's death were extremely distressing and urged the public to avoid speculation and allow the police investigation to progress. But it was impossible for many people to process the news of her death in isolation. The murder of Ann Widdecombe arrived in a country that already carried within it 2 unhealed wounds. For many across Britain, the killing immediately brought back memories of the murders of Labour MP Joe Cox in 2016 and Conservative MP David Ames in 2021.
Hay tore, flowers were laid. Peter was Ann's personal driver for the last 10 years.
I like her because if you asked her a question, you'd get a direct answer. There was no mucking about. No, she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I thought she was a great politician. She was very strong in her views. I don't think you'd be able to replace that sort of person. Not really.
News of Ann's murder has put her nearest village of Ilsington on the front pages. She came to this shop every morning for her newspaper.
But she was very polite, very nice, quite a strong lady. Shocked. Yeah. And very sad, you know, she was a very lively lady. It's a terrible thing to happen.
The long-time Conservative politician became a spokesperson for Reform UK, laying a wreath close to her home, the party's leader Nigel Farage.
Words, there are no words that I can utter to somebody who's committed this act of barbarity against an innocent 78-year-old lady who wouldn't harm a fly. I just hope that the killer is caught as quickly as possible and brought to justice. That's all I can say.
We gather with sadness in our hearts at the sudden death of Ann Widdecombe.
Meanwhile, at Buckfast Abbey, a mass held in her name, the congregation gathering to pay their respects.
I think what I enjoyed today was his very balanced and appreciative view of Ann Widdecombe, someone who I think was magnificent, even though I disagreed with every word she said.
To be here on the same day that they're having prayers said for her is a lovely coincidence.
I think she'd be very happy with the service today, yeah.
It has now been several days since Ann Widdecombe sustained serious injuries inside her home. Pressure to find who was responsible is growing.
Cox's husband, Brendan Cox, wrote that Widdecombe's death brought back all of the pain and emotion of losing his wife. He wrote that while the motive behind Widdecombe's death remained unknown, nothing could ever justify such an act of violence. Joe Cox was murdered outside her constituency office. Thomas Mayer, convicted in her killing, repeatedly shouted Britain first during the attack. 5 years later, Conservative MP David Ames was stabbed multiple times while meeting constituents. His killer was later given a whole life sentence after prosecutors established he had been inspired by the Islamic State. Andrew Barclay, a politics lecturer at the University of Sheffield, said the killing certainly comes within the backdrop of MPs' safety becoming more and more of a concern, and noted that reported crimes against MPs had more than doubled since the 2019 general election. Tim Bale, a politics professor at Queen Mary University of London, said the UK was generally an unviolent society, yet had seen almost 2 MPs killed in the last 10 years. He added that the country had also become a more politically polarized place than it had ever been, and that politicians had had to get used to people threatening them online and in person. These observations carry a profound and sobering weight, but they are observations about context. They are not conclusions about this specific case. As of the latest confirmed reporting, the motive behind Ann Widdecombe's death has not been established by investigators. To assess the legacy of Ann Widdecombe is to grapple with a genuine tension because she was a woman about whom very few people felt nothing at all. To some, she was a principled defender of traditional values. To others, a controversial figure whose views often challenged modern political consensus. Yet even her strongest critics generally acknowledged that she possessed qualities increasingly uncommon in public life. Authenticity, fearlessness, and a refusal to compromise deeply held beliefs for personal popularity. Her ministerial record was significant. She served as Minister of State for Employment from 1994 to 1995 and as Minister of State for Prisons from 1995 to 1997. Her time at the Home Office made her a nationally recognized figure, though not always for reasons that brought universal approval. In opposition, she became one of the Conservative Party's most powerful public communicators. Her phrase about Michael Howard, that he had something of the night about him, became one of the most quoted lines in British political history. It demonstrated in 8 words the quality that made her distinctive, an absolute unwillingness to moderate what she thought in order to avoid discomfort. Her views on abortion, same-sex marriage, and LGBTQ rights were deeply socially conservative. She stated them consistently, defended them publicly, and never softened them for approval. Those who shared those views saw in her a rare and courageous champion. Those who opposed them saw a figure whose positions caused real harm to vulnerable people. Both of those things were, and remain, genuinely held. Her conversion to Catholicism in 1993 was not, for her, a private matter. It was a public declaration that shaped everything about the rest of her public life. She memorably took part in a televised debate in London in 2009, where she and a cardinal debated Stephen Fry and Christopher Hitchens on whether the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world. She and the cardinal lost the debate, but not before putting up, by many accounts, a vigorous fight. What is perhaps most striking, looking back, is the sheer breadth of her reinvention. She understood the importance of communicating directly with the public, whether through newspaper columns, television interviews, or public speaking. Her distinctive personality ensured that she remained a familiar face long after leaving frontline politics. She appeared on Strictly Come Dancing, in Celebrity Big Brother, in Pantomime, and she brought to each of those experiences the same quality she brought to Parliament, a complete absence of pretense. When she danced badly, she laughed. When she was asked difficult questions, she answered them. When she was mocked, she absorbed it and moved forward. As her management company noted in their tribute, she had said of her own approach to life, "We get one go this side of eternity, one go." She was, right to the last morning of her life, to that Talk TV interview at 8 o'clock, to the final message sent to the Channel 5 researcher at 12:19 in the afternoon, still arguing, still working, still showing up. Investigations of this kind demand patience from the public, from the press, and from those of us who feel an urgent need to understand. Here is what Devon and Cornwall police have confirmed. Ann Widdecombe, 78, was found dead on the morning of the 9th of July, 2026, at her isolated home in Hayter Vale, on the edge of Dartmoor National Park. Investigators believe she was attacked approximately 23 hours earlier, at around 12:30 in the afternoon on the 8th of July. She had sustained serious injuries. A murder investigation was formally launched on the 10th of July. A 26-year-old man was arrested on the 10th of July and released the following morning. He is no longer under investigation. A 28-year-old man was subsequently arrested on the 11th of July in South Yorkshire, approximately 320 kilometers from the scene. As of the latest confirmed update, he remains in custody. Police were assisted in that arrest by counter-terrorism policing, though investigators have confirmed there is currently no information suggesting the killing was terrorism-related. Police have also stated there is no evidence of political motivation. Investigators have said they do not believe there is a wider risk to the public. Here is what remains unknown. The motive behind Ann Widdecombe's death has not been established. No connection between the suspect currently in custody and the victim has been publicly confirmed. The precise circumstances of the attack have not been released. The cause of death has not been confirmed beyond the description of serious injuries. What led detectives to pursue a suspect hundreds of miles from the scene has not been publicly explained. These are not failures of the investigation. They are the natural condition of an inquiry that is, by any measure, still in its early stages. Assistant Chief Constable Matt Longman has said, "Our murder inquiry is in its early stages, but moving at a significant pace. We are deploying all of the necessary resources to find out exactly what has happened. The temptation in cases like this is to fill in the gaps, to reach for a narrative that makes sense of something senseless. The British press has faced that temptation in the days since this story broke, and the country's political leaders have, with notable restraint, largely resisted it. The Interior Minister's call to avoid speculation and allow the police investigation to progress reflects something important: that speculation, however well-intentioned, risks damaging an investigation, misleading the public, and doing profound injustice to the people involved, not least to Ann Widdecombe's family, who are grieving. There is also a broader reckoning that Britain is being asked to begin, carefully, without jumping to conclusions about this specific case. But honestly, 2 MPs have been murdered in a decade. Reported crimes against members of Parliament have more than doubled since 2019. The country is more politically divided than it has been in living memory. These are not theories. They are documented facts confirmed by independent researchers and acknowledged by political leaders of every party. What role, if any, that climate played in what happened in a quiet Devon hamlet on the afternoon of the 8th of July 2026 is something only this investigation can determine, and it has not yet done so. Ann Widdecombe spent the better part of 5 decades in public life. She was not always loved. She was not always right. She provoked, she challenged, she irritated, she charmed. She made enemies by principle and friends by force of personality. She believed, with a thoroughness that few politicians ever manage, in what she said, and she said it out loud, repeatedly, without qualification, whether or not it was fashionable. She had been talking about politics for 78 years, from the Oxford Union to a Zoom call she never managed to join. What happened in those final minutes at her home in Hayter Vale belongs now to a police investigation that is still unfolding. It belongs to a court process that has not yet begun. It belongs to whatever truth investigators are, at this moment, working toward. It does not yet belong to us to judge, or to conclude, or to explain. What we can say, what the evidence of her entire life compels us to say, is that Ann Widdecombe never asked to be understood. She only ever asked to be heard, and Britain for 4.5 decades heard her. Devon and Cornwall police have asked members of the public with any information relating to this investigation to contact them directly. The investigation into the death of Ann Widdecombe is ongoing. No charges have been confirmed at the time this narration was recorded.